and we're going to talk about pullovers, specifically dumbbell pullovers, which is a weird thing because it seems to be a hot topic. I'm seeing a lot of people talk about it right now as like a rib cage expander, and that's not a new idea. That's an old idea. They're, in the 60s, 50s, 60s, when they didn't really know much about, training science or hypertrophy or how muscle protein synthesis occurred or really how muscles grew, period. There was an idea that to get a bigger chest, you could expand your rib cage by they would do like 20 rep sets of squats to get really out of breath. And then they would try to do these pullovers to expand their rib cage. You really can't change your bone structure. I mean, it seems silly that even in the 50s or 60s they would think that was a thing, but I'm seeing that more and more now as a chest movement. And I make the argument that I think it's about the worst chest movement you could possibly have, because what the pecs do, the pectoral major does, is it takes the humerus and it brings it across the body, and the lower part of the pectoris major brings the humerus down, kind of across and down, and you kind of get a little across the very, very top fibers across and up, but that's mostly the anterior deltoid. Now this motion, where your humerus goes basically from your ear to your hip, that is a lat movement. The lat is what will pull that motion. Now, the reason I think people feel like there's some chest involvement is when you're using a dumbbell, you're pushing your hands together. So you are getting like a static contraction to hold the dumbbell. And then because you're doing that, that is a chest contraction, basically. So whether you're, moving the weight with the chest at all, the fact that you're in that position, the chest is going to contract. And there is some pectoral minor action with it. But I'm seeing this really more and more, again, talking about like as a chest expander, and it can be a decent movement. You can make this movement, you can turn this into a tricep movement with just a slight tweak, a little bend in the elbow. It's a great, because the long head of the tricep crosses the shoulder and the elbow. And so when you get that motion, it's actually, and what a common thing when I was younger and starting out as a personal trainer, and I would have people do pullovers for lats, a lot of them, that's what their complaint would be, is that they were sore here, and you kind of, this is one of those movements where you can make it work what you want, but you can also get like intercostal action here, but it's really not, the direct action of the pectoris major is not this motion.
Would you work it more on a back day versus
for me personally, I always did it on back day if I did them, but I didn't do them very often. Now you can do some interesting things to make it even better of a back movement, because the problem with any free weight is the whole motion, force is only going down. Gravity is only going that way. So regardless of where his body is, the tension's only here. So when he's in this position right now, the action of the lats are to pull his humerus that way, but there's no force that way. There's no force that way. It's only straight down. So there's zero actual lat contraction at that point. He's just weight through his bones. But if you attach a band to the dumbbell to something behind here and perform the same movement, you get the gravitational pull there, and then as he goes up, the band tension starts to increase at almost the same rate that the gravitational force decreases. Because, the force of the gravity is going to go like the sine of the angle of his arms. Where he's flat, it's going to be at full gravity, and then, all the way at 90 or 0, it's going to be 0 gravitational tension.